talking to me about how the legend of the belt buckle started
Ah,
with the ultra marathon because it's so unique.
well, are you? I should digress a bit, and are you an ultra marathoner? Have you done an ultra marathon? I don't know that much about you.
Yeah, last October, September of last year, I did a half Ironman, and then like 20
Mm.
days later, I did a 50-mile ultra marathon.
Ah,
And the longest I had ran prior to that 50 miles was the 13 miles for the half Ironman.
I like your style.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the 100-mile foot race started as a horse race. I should say the 100-mile trail foot race.
Mm.
And there was a race in California that went from near Lake Tahoe to outside of Sacramento. It was called the Tevis Cup, and it was a 100-mile foot race for horses. And one year in 1974, a guy named Gordy Ansley had trained and trained and trained for this 100-mile horse race. But the legend has it a couple days before the race was supposed to begin, his horse came up lame. So he said to the race directors, "I still want to do the race. Can I still do it?" And they said, "Well, how are you going to do it, Gordy? You don't have a horse." And he said, "I'm going to run." And of course, they thought he was crazy. Like, this guy's lost his mind. And Gordy is a little crazy if you know him. But they said, "Okay, let's let this joker, start with the horses." So lined up at the starting line with all the horses is this runner, Gordy Ansley. Lo and behold, 24 hours later, he shows up at the finish line and he ran the entire 100 miles. He made it. He beat some of the horses. People couldn't believe it. But of course, they don't have like a standard medal for him because it's a horse race. They don't have like a
Mm.
runner's medal, but they had, rodeo belt buckles, and they thought, let's just give him one of those. That's the prize. So they gave Gordy a belt buckle, and that's how the theme of this belt buckle for finishing an ultramarathon had its origins.
That's such a cool origin story, though. And imagine being able to finish that in under 24 hours, like back then when it wasn't established. That's so amazing. He didn't have the modern gear. I don't know. He's probably wearing whatever he was wearing, maybe boots.
Yeah, it's extraordinary what he did. It's and legendary. Obviously, he sparked a legend. But after he did that, the Western States 100-mile endurance run was launched, so it became a thing.
That was based off of that came after that. So the
Yeah, that
West.
was the Western States. They said, let's make it a run now. He did it. So I don't know. The next year, I think there was like a handful of people that showed up. It kind of had fits and starts for a while before it became an official race. But yeah, that was the beginning of the Western States. Mm.
That's really cool. I didn't know that that's where it was originated from. I've talked to some cool people who've run some races. Like I spoke with Adrian McDonald, who held the Leadville 100 record for a while, and he's done Western States, so he's talking about that. But I didn't know that that's where that originated from. That's such a cool story.
I mean, the more might delve into, some of the races we take for granted as runners and ultra runners, and marathoners and ultra marathoners. Even the story of the marathon is even more fascinating because it dates back, 2,500 years.
Mm.
But that's maybe a different story for a different day.
No, I definitely was something I want to dive into with you being in Greece right now. But before we
Yeah.
kind of get into that, I mean, you've got a history of accolades and amazing things. I could be talking for about 5 minutes just bullet pointing off all the things that you've been able to accomplish. But what's so unique is you didn't have an upbringing of, like, you did a little bit of running in high school and college, a little bit of that, but you didn't pursue it. Like, you didn't excel at that in terms of like, this is what you wanted to do. It wasn't until your 30th birthday, drunk at a bar with some buddies, that you're like, hey, I'm gonna run this 30 miles. Tell that story and tell me what stuck this time, running that 30 miles that made you catapult into this whole career that you have now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll digress to when I was a little boy, and I remember my earliest childhood recollections are running home from kindergarten.
Mm.
I literally remember like the first thoughts I had of waiting for the bell to ring. So sitting in the classroom, trying to, stay focused and not go crazy, and waiting for the bell to ring. And once it did, I just felt this rush of freedom, and I just ran out of the classroom. So I used to run home from kindergarten. And this was, in LA. I was born before your dad was born. So this is a time when it was
Yep.
safe to do this. It's kind of like the 60s. And my mom had no problem with it. So I ran competitively up until I was a freshman in high school. And we won the league championships. And I thought, okay, that's as far as I'll ever take my running career. I'm done. I'm done with that shit. No more running. It's kind of boring. Like running's boring. I got better ways to spend my time. Flash forward to my 30th birthday. So, after high school, I went to college and I went to graduate school and then I got an MBA and I got a nice job in San Francisco. And I had all the perks, that come with a good job in San Francisco. I had stock options. I had, a company car. I had a 401k. I had a great bonus program, fat paycheck. And on the night of my 30th birthday, I was in this bar in the Marina District of San Francisco, doing what a lot of us guys do on our 30th birthday, at least used to do. We used to get really drunk on bad tequila. And at midnight, I told them, "Hey, I'm going to leave." And they said, "Where are you going? It's your 30th birthday. Let's have another round of tequila to celebrate." And I said, "No, I'm going to run 30 miles to celebrate instead." And they looked at me and said, "But you're not a runner. You're drunk." And I remember saying to them, "Yeah, I am very drunk, but I'm still gonna do it." And I walked out of this bar, and I didn't even own running gear at the time. I had on these comfortable silk boxer shorts, like silk underwear. And I remember peeling off my pants, you know, throwing them down the alleyway and just literally stumbling south into the night, knowing there was a town called Half Moon Bay that was 30 miles away. And I said, "Just run to Half Moon Bay." And 10 miles down the road, you can imagine the tequila started wearing off and it started getting painful. I thought, what the hell am I doing? This was a horrible idea. But I'll never forget, I looked up and I saw the stars and, the sky and the darkness. And I could see the lights of SFO of the, San Francisco International Airport down below me. And I was out on this backcountry road all by myself and I could feel the breeze and this kind of light mist of fog. And it was like God said to me, "Hey, dude, you're not a business guy. Like, you don't like being a business guy. Enough of this MBA stuff. Quit and become a runner. You love to run. Just
Yeah.
do what you love. You're going to be a lot happier." So I somehow stumbled 30 miles that night and decided the next day I'm going to resign from my corporate job and become a runner. And that was, 3 decades ago. Hmm.
Real quick, before we get too deep into this conversation, I wanted to give you guys a peek under the hood when it comes to the data. So the data on this app shows me that less than 21% of my average monthly listeners are actually subscribed to the show. Now, subscribing to the show helps way more than you'd think. It helps the show get pushed out to more people. It helps the show grow. It helps me get more guests. It helps improve the quality. So if you guys like listening to me and more importantly, like listening to the guests that I'm bringing on, do me a quick favor, hit the subscribe button right here on this app, and we will continue to grow the show bigger and better with each and every episode. Thank you so much. That's amazing. When you say like the next day you resigned and became a runner, there's so much ambiguity in that. Like, for example, the regular person today, like if they're like, "Oh, I love to run," they're listening to this, I want to do that. What are the steps after the resignation to go to winning the what is it? The Badwater Ultra, to running across the Sahara, to doing 50 miles or 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days? What's the time frame there?
Well, I mean, I have to put the when I first ran that 30-mile race, it was I used to a race. It was a stumble through the night. It was in 1992, so this is pre-internet. This is obviously pre-social media. This is pre-smartphone. This is even pre-cell phone. So it was a very different landscape back then.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was like, how do you make a living doing this? Nowadays, you can actually make a living as an ultramarathoner, a comfortable living if you're at the top. But even if you're not at the top, through social media, through having side gigs, you can cobble together a living doing what you love. Back then, you kind of worked for a big corporation, you retired, you got the golden ring and you got the pension plan and you're supposed to be happy. But for me to step away from my corporate job was really scary because what was I supposed to do? So, there. there are people that say, the lessons of sports translate to business. And I would say just the opposite is true as well. The lessons from business translate to sport. So I said, okay, even if you win every single ultra marathon on the planet, you're going to get a lot of belt buckles, but not going to keep the lights on. So I thought you got to work with sponsors. You've got to maybe. I wrote a book and became a bestseller, and I thought this is great. Let's write another book. So I looked at other ways to keep the lights on, if you will, put food on the table. As I was pursuing the sport that was so obscure back then.
What was the time frame between that 30-mile stumble through the dark and your first official pro race?
It was like less than a year. So how it happened is that I ran the 30 miles. And then I started running regularly. I became a runner, if you will. Like a lot of people who are runners now can relate to like that flash where they became a runner. Like everyone has their story of like how I became a runner. Mine was that night. I kind of rediscovered running, and I became a runner. So I remember I would run out to the Golden Gate Bridge every day, and it was like 5 or 6 miles, and I was the fastest guy out there. Like, I prided myself, and no one ever passed me. I would, run out there faster than anyone. It's not even a race. It's a stupid jog, it's like a training jog. But one day I was running home, and if you know San Francisco, anywhere you wanna go home, you gotta run over a hill. I mean, it's a hilly place. So I was running up this hill called Lover's Lane to get back to my house, and these 2 guys passed me like I was standing still. I mean, these guys were like a different species, and they were in packs. I mean, these guys blew by me so fast, and they like left me coughing in their dust. And I thought, wow, who are these guys? I got to talk with them. But they just kind of disappeared over the horizon. And I thought, I'll never see them again. But I got up over to the crest of the hill, and there are these 2 guys, and they're doing burpees. And I thought, okay, they just ran up this hill. Now they're doing burpees. Who are these guys? What are they doing? And I asked them, "Are you training for something?" And they kind of said, "Yes." They weren't very talkative. And I said, "Is it a race?" And they're like, "Yes." And I said, "Are there hills involved?" And the guy said, "No." And his buddy said, "There are mountains involved." I'm like, "Oh, mountain." And I said, "Tell me more. Tell me more." And they got up and they said, "Well, it's a 50-mile foot race." And I said, "Hold it, 50 miles? Like that's almost 2 marathons back to back. Like, are there campgrounds along the way, or hotels? Where do you stay at night?" And the guy's like, "What are you talking about? You don't stay anywhere at night." The guy's like, "The gun goes off and you start running. You finish when you cross the finish line." And his buddy kind of elbowed him and said, "If you cross the finish line." Kind of looking at me like, there's no way this joker will ever cross the finish line of a 50-mile race. And off they went. So I went to the library, and there's this thing called the Dewey Decimal System. It was like microfiche. And I'm looking on the microfilm, and I find this race. I mail in my check. I think it was like a $15 check I wrote. I sent it in, and I got accepted this 50-mile race. I went and did this 50-mile race, and it was the most difficult thing I'd ever done in my life. I mean, it was so brutal. It was so painful. I remember touching the tip of my nose and going, even the tip of my nose hurts. But I finished, and I was just destroyed. And I was in the medical tent. I was wrapped in one of those Mylar blankets, shivering, trying to have some soup, dribbling on myself. And I see those same 2 guys that passed me, and they're high-fiving each other this time, going, "We qualified. We qualified." I'm like, "What the hell do these guys qualify for? The insane asylum?" And they said, "No, no, we qualified for the Western States 100-mile endurance run." And I said, "Hold it. Like twice as far as we just went?" And the guy said, "It's twice as far. You start at the base of the ski resort, and the first 5 miles is at the very top of the ski resort. And then you run 95 miles through the mountains. You cross rivers in the middle of the night, and you try to get there in under 24 hours." And I said, "But how do you eat?" He's like, "You eat while you run." I said, "Where do you sleep?" He said, "You don't sleep. You put on a headlamp and you just run. You run for 24 continuous hours through the mountains." And I thought this is the most fucked up thing I've ever heard. Like, that is insane. No human can do that. And the last thing they said to me as they were leaving is, "Hey, buddy, you qualified as well." And when they said that to me, I got the chills. I'm like, "Oh my god." I just knew that if I didn't try the Western States, the rest of my life, I'd be thinking, you didn't step up to the plate. You qualified for this race and you kinda backed down." So I signed up for the Western States 100, and that was 1994. And yeah, and I did the Western States that year.
Wow. What was the time frame between the 50 and the Western States? How long did you have to prep for that?
It was, let's see, it was about 7 months. Yeah, 6 or 7 months, yeah.
That's so crazy. I can't, doing your 30-mile stumble, training that year, doing the 50, and then 7 months later doing the Western States. With that 50, you said it was, so painful. I've done a 50. It's pretty painful. Mine didn't have very much elevation.
Yeah,
Mine,
um,
but the most painful thing for me was just obviously I hadn't ran that far. I hit like 20 miles and the outside of my left side of my knee, it was hurting so bad. Luckily, my crew had like some Tylenol topical cream that I was able to apply. And then after like a mile, it went away. So I was able to just run the rest of the time and have not many issues. But
uh,
what with your 50 miles, like it's so new to the sport, it's the early 1990s. There's not the nutrition, there's not the footwear, there's not all this stuff. How did you prep for that? Or did you just go in kind of Goggins style before Goggins with like a folding chair and a Snickers bar?
yeah, I mean, I went in completely unprepared. I had no idea I was running. I mean, I was a surfer at the time. I was running
Mhm.
in surf shorts, like board shorts. I didn't have the right gear. I didn't have a hydration pack. I didn't have anything. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't train. I didn't even know what a training block was. Again, this is when Goggins was in diapers. I mean, no
Yeah.
disrespect to David, who's a friend of mine, but this is way before Goggins. I mean,
Hmm.
so it was like a step into the unknown completely for me, and I was wildly unprepared. Thankfully, I was younger. Youth, you can get through a lot of shit, stupid shit when you're young. So I just muscled my way through it, but I suffered. I mean, I couldn't walk. I remember for 2 weeks after that, I couldn't walk downstairs.
Yeah, I remember I still don't have both the big toenails on my two big toes. They came off, and then one of my smaller toenails came off too. So I'm missing three toenails. But overall I felt pretty good coming off of it, which is good. I've got a background of strength training and competitive CrossFit and stuff. So my muscle
Yeah.
endurance was there. My aerobic endurance is has a little bit development to go along the way. But how was your first experience with the Western? Was it as bad as the 50? I mean, you knew it was going to be bad because you did the 50. I presume you thought it was going to be worse as because you felt so bad and it's twice as long. What was the end result? How did you feel?
I mean, it was more of a spiritual journey on the Western States. I mean, it was, out of body experiences, hallucinations, it was something completely different. I mean, it was, the 50 miler was like within the realm of human possibility, I thought. I finished, before it was dark.
Mm.
The Western States, you're watching the sunrise. You're starting before the sunrise. You see the sunrise. You watch the sun, through the cycle of the day. You watch the sun set. You watch the moon rise. You run with the full moon. You watch the moon set, and then you watch the sun rise the next morning. So it is so elemental to being a human what you do at Western States, where most people nowadays don't even. I mean, I would say probably 90% of the population never even spent an entire 24 hours outdoors ever in their whole life.
Hmm.
So when you do that, it's almost like a cleansing, like all the modernity just is washed away from you. You become something primal and raw, and it's just I don't know. Once I did it, I thought I can't stop. Like this was such an awakening for me that I want more.
How were you between this time frame of the 50 and the first 100? You resigned from your job. You hadn't completed any races yet, so I'm assuming you didn't have sponsors. You didn't have that publicity yet. So were you just living off savings? Were just training all day? What was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of said to myself, if you don't go all in, you're never going to go. So just go all in and see what happens. And thankfully, at the finish of the Western States, this company called the North Face
Hmm.
approached me and they said, "Hey, we want to design a shoe that's specifically for the trails. And it was such a radical idea. Like, hold it, it's going to be a shoe just for the trails. Like that's incredible because we're running in road shoes back then. So they said, "Do you want to get involved in the development?" And I thought, okay, this is a consulting job I could definitely take on. So I started up with the North Face. One thing led to the next, and I didn't even think to be scared. I never stressed at night so much about, where's the money going to come from. It all started snowballing so quickly. I was just caught up in it all.
What was it like designing that first trail shoe? Were they sending you like iterations you'd run in it and be like, "Hey, tweak this," or how did that go?
I mean, we started from 2D, so they kind of, they had their graphic artist
Mhm.
kind of sketch some things, and then they did a mock-up, like a 3D model, and we said, okay, that looks good. Then we kind of tweaked the tread around a little bit to make it maybe a little more grippy, and then they had an actual prototype built, and I tried it. I did some wear testing. I gave them feedback. We went through a couple iterations of feedback with different models, and then we solidified the final product, and they made it. They produced it. Yeah.
How'd you feel about it? Was it a good shoe? Not compared to today's standard, but how did you feel about it at the time?
Oh, it was not the most cushiony shoe, but it was okay. It was called the Kuna Crest. So there's a ridge line in the Sierra Nevada called, the Kuna. So it's the
Mhm.
the crest of the Kuna Crest, and it was nicknamed the Kuna Crippler because there was just no cushioning on this thing. Yeah,
That's brutal.
yeah, the
Well,
Kuna Crippler. Yeah.
you mentioned, when you first started running, you run out to the bridge every day, you wouldn't let anybody pass you. Makes me think to today's training, like there's that 80-20 rule. A lot of people like run a lot of zone 2, build that aerobic base, and then you have your track sessions and your speed sessions. Did you start to change your training after you did that first Western, or were you still just running hard and fast each day?
Yeah, I mean, the whole coaching platform thing didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no smartwatch. I mean, I got my first Timex GPS watch in 2006 when I ran 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days, and it was this big bulky thing I had to put on my arm to get a GPS signal. So I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing back in the 90s. I'm still amazed that I finished so many races because I had no idea how to train.
Yeah.
I was erratic. There was no focus. I mean, it was crazy. But again, I had youth on my side and I had fresh legs, and I got through it. That's why I say it's hard to compare some of people are saying, well, course records are being smashed all the time. It's kind of hard to compare nowadays to back then because people know how to train nowadays, and they know what
Mhm.
to drink, and they know how to hide, what to eat, and so forth. Back then, it was just, kind of man against man. It was just, you against nature, and trying to do what you thought was right. Mm.
So back in those days, were you really just waking up and going out the door and just, I'm gonna run until I don't want to run? Was there no kind of plan? It was just every day you'd come to a decision of what you were gonna do.
Yeah, every day it was like a decision. And I remember I started doing some hill repeats and stair
Mm.
training, and I thought, oh, this is good. It was basically hit training. But this is before hit training was hit training. And I thought, revving up your heart rate like this and going into, like anabolic respiration is probably a good thing. I didn't know, but I started doing that. And then, I did this. I heard someone say LSD, and I said, "What's LSD? It's a drug, right?" And he said, "No, it's long, slow distance. Just go run a long way." And I remember running, 30, 40 miles just at a casual pace, thinking, okay, I did LSD. And then someone told me about tempo. And I'm like, oh, what's tempo? And they said, well, you kind of run at your 10K pace for 5K. I'm like, oh, I got to try tempo. And then someone told me about fartlets. And I thought, that's gross. What's a fartlet? And I started doing fartlets, and now we laugh at all these things. Yeah.
At what point, so early 1990s, you're running this, you do your 50, you do your 100, and then I believe it was 2005 that you win the Badwater Ultra. Is that right?
I think it was 2006.
2006.
No, yeah, 2000. Nah, maybe it's 2004. I can't remember.
You've had
I
a
think it
lot
was
of races.
2004. Yeah, no, I first did Badwater in 1995, and I think I won it in 2000. I didn't even say I won it. I say I survived the fastest, but I think it was 2004. I think. Yeah.
Well, tell people who don't know what is the Badwater because it's nasty.
Oh, yeah. Well, Badwater is the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, so it's over 200 feet below sea level, 262 feet below sea level. And 135 miles away from that spot is the highest spot in the contiguous US, which is Mount Whitney. So the idea is to run from the lowest spot to the highest spot. And it's 135 miles, and it goes across this place called Death Valley. And they hold the race in the middle of summer where it gets a little bit hot in Death Valley. Like Death Valley is the hottest place on earth. The highest recorded temperature ever was in Badwater. It was over 134 degrees. So it's a insanely brutal race. You know, it's hot. It's typically above 120. It's hilly. It's windy. You know, there's sandstorms. There's everything. But that's about and it finishes. You know, more than halfway up the side of a mountain. Yeah.
Talk to me about the difference between the first time you did it in 95 versus when you won it in 2004 or 2005. What were the differences in you and in the race?
Yeah. I mean, the first year I did it, I think there was 23 or 24 people. And so it was very, and I think it was almost all men. Maybe there's one or two women, but it was like almost all men. It was survival. You know, I mean, I had one crew member with me, just my dad, poor guy. And so it was just kind of, you didn't see anyone almost the whole time you were out there. And, you know, the little townships you pass through, Furnace Creek, Stovepipe Wells, you know, Penniman Springs, there was no one there. These places were deserted because who wants to be out in Death Valley in the middle of summer? So it was a very solo experience. There was a lot of you know, just no ice. There were periods where it was unthinkable to go through what nowadays what we went through back then. I mean, periods of no ice. You know, even running out of water. So it was a very different race than, you know, when I won it in 2004, and very different than today, where these places I just mentioned, they're kind of little meccas now in the middle of summer, believe it or not. People want to go out to Death Valley and experience the heat. So it's, you know, they're open at night when you pass through. When I passed through, you know, these places were boarded up. You know, there, you know, there are 100 people in the race. It's a bigger race, you know, and you have to have a crew with you, and you have to have 3 or 4 people helping you. So it's much different now than it was back then.
Did you finish the first time? Tell me about that experience, how it affected you.
Oh, the first time, no, I almost died, and I almost killed my family too,
Jeez.
because I rented a motorhome like an idiot I am. We'll take a motorhome out to Death Valley in the middle of summer. That'll be pleasant. Yeah. And this thing, of course, broke down. And so my family, thankfully, because I had a 6-month-old daughter at the time,
Hmm.
my family somehow was rescued by a ranger, park ranger, that took them to a hotel that was, you know, 150 miles away. And they brought me out to the start. You know, I had all the stuff I had, all my change of clothes, all my nutrition and my hydration was all inside this motorhome that was broken down on the side of the road. So I basically ran solo. I ran self-supported, which is ridiculous trying
Yeah.
to run in that kind of heat. And I remember I got to Furnace Creek, which is mile 18. And again, it was completely boarded up back then. Now it's open in the middle of summer, but it was boarded up. And there was a gas station that was closed down. I remember there's like a water spigot, And I was so thirsty, I reached out to, and it's like at 8 at night, so it's already dark. And I reached out to grab the handle of the spigot to drink some water, and it burned my fingers. It was
Oh,
like picking up a hot pan off the stove. I mean, I remember my fingers burning, like, ah, shit. So I got a leaf and I turned on this water, and it came out so hot, and eventually got less hot, kind of warm. And I drank all this water. And then I looked up and there was a sign that said non-potable water. So I
no.
just drank like, I don't know what it was, RV, brown water, black water. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good. And, by mile 40, I was just throwing up like every time I threw up, I thought everything's out of me, and then I'd throw up again. And finally, my dad found me out in the middle of the desert, and we were so stupid back then. He heard that bagels have a lot of carbohydrates, like, you need carbs, so eat bagels. So he brought all these plain white bread bagels. I'm like a camel. I have no moisture in my mouth whatsoever. I'm so dehydrated, and I'm trying to chew this bagel that I can't even tear a piece off because it's so hardened from the heat. And I tried to chew, I couldn't even chew this bagel. I mean, it was like toothpaste that became Play-Doh in my mouth. I just spit it out, so no food. And then finally, I got to a point where, I mean, I was just kind of bending over and pulling down my pants and opening my mouth, and I was just shooting out of both sides at the same time,
Jeez.
diarrhea out of one side and vomit out of the other. I mean, it
Yeah.
was horrible. That happened to me twice. And then finally my crew just said, when I kept falling, I was stumbling, I wasn't even I was kind of walking around in circles at a point, not even able to move forward. And they just drove me to a hotel and said, "It's over." Yeah, that's how the first attempt went.
And you came back for 9, 10, multiple more
It's
times.
Yeah, I finished 10 times now, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, with that first attempt, obviously you were extremely dehydrated. You were completely messed up. Would you have kept going had your crew not pulled you? Like, what was your mental state like?
No, I passed out. I mean, I
Okay.
literally collapsed. So, I remember, I started hallucinating, and I saw this minor 49er on the opposite side of the road, like an old, minor 49er. He had
Yeah.
overalls on, he had this big gray beard, and he came walking across the street at me, and he had this gold pan in his hand, and he held out his gold pan to me, and he said, "Water, water, I need water." And I was carrying a handheld water flask, and there's a little bit left in there, and I kinda aspirated it in the water, my water into his gold pan, and I heard the water sizzling on the ground, and I thought, and I reached out to, like, touch his shoulder, and my hand went right through him. Like, "Oh my god, that's a hallucination." And then I saw these big dinosaurs off in the distance. I mean, it got it got better and better, and then I I was hallucinating, I was, like, looking up at my crew laying in a bed, and I went to put my hand through my crew, and they were real.
Mm.
And I said, "Hold it, where am I?" And they said, "Oh, god, Dean, we found you passed out along the side of the road. We drove you to this hotel, and we turned on the air conditioner, and we put you in bed, and you've been asleep for 6 hours." And I said, "But wait, I wasn't finished, I wasn't done." And my dad said to me, "Son, you were very done." I'll assure you, you were very finished, like, you were completely done. So that's
Did you
how the first year ended, yeah.
were you thinking about a lot nowadays? Again, we have a big culture of mental toughness and developing that. A lot of that, came about with the popularity again of David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me and all of that. But at that time
Mm.
when you were doing this, were you looking at it as a mental toughness, or was quitting even an option? Like, did you think about that?
It was a different mindset back then. It wasn't such a thing,
Yeah.
I think and I don't even think I'm that tough because I look back on previous generations, I think they were really tough, I mean, but we were just tougher back then because we didn't know any difference, we didn't know there was, a hat you could put on to keep your sun out of the your face out of the sun, there's sunblock, that kind of thing. It was just you just dealt with it. You prepared. and you went to battle, and you didn't stop until you passed out on the side of the road. So it was just a different mindset, different mentality altogether.
There's this interesting phenomenon that oh, I think they were looking at survivors of the Titanic at the time, and you think when people are put into situations of extreme hardship, like a disaster like the Titanic, you expect the young and the healthy to survive. But what they found was that the elder people had better chances of surviving because they had gone through hard experiences before and they knew that that was going to come to an end. Like they knew they were going to get through it, versus young people, this is the hardest thing they've ever done. And they don't think it's ever going to come to an end, and they don't ever think they can surmount it. So it's really interesting to see that the older people who've survived and been through hardship have a better chance of survival just because of their mental fortitude and what they've been through.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. That is interesting. That's definitely interesting.
If you're one of those people that watches podcasts and doesn't just listen, you've probably noticed this sauna right behind me in each and every one of my episodes. That is my Heavenly Heat Eco Sauna, and it is seriously the best. It's not just there for decoration. I use it each and every day. Heavenly Heat makes some of the cleanest saunas on the market. They are ultra low EMF, no glues, no dyes, no plywood. It's all 100% hemlock, and they are extremely easy and high quality to assemble. And my favorite thing, they don't require any electrical or wiring. All you have to do is plug it into an outlet and it starts working immediately. Heavenly Heat is a sponsor of the show, and if you're interested in getting a high quality sauna, head to heavenlyheatsaunas.com/Merrill. That's heavenlyheatsaunas.com/MERRILL, and use the code Merrill at checkout to save some money. Thank you so much.
So, first time, death, dehydration, vomiting, and spewing out of both ends. Flash forward 10 years, when you win, when you survive it the fastest, you were more prepared. Talk to me about that race and how it differed.
Yeah, I mean, that was literally the only race where I've gone into it saying, I want to win this race. So, I've won races. I've won quite a few races, but I've never said, hey, I want to win this race. I've just ended up winning. I've always looked at racing as an experience. Like today's going to be a great experience. Just enjoy and live to the fullest the experience of today. With this race, I said, no, I want to win this race. I'm going to go and I'm going to train for it. I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to try to win. I'm going to get a good crew. I'm going to train my crew. I'm going to not be half-assed about it. I'm going to prepare and have everything dialed in and win the race. And it pretty much went to plan. And it wasn't, I mean, it was, when I won the race, it was a little bit, it was great and everything, but it was almost like a letdown. Okay, so you won, big deal. Like, you didn't really enjoy it so much. Like you just went out there and raced it and kicked some ass. Big deal.
Why do you think that you go into it more often with the mentality of just having that experience and having a lot more fun? What do you get out of it that you don't get out of winning, or at least training with the intent to win?
I think there's just, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that when you run 100 miles or even 50 miles or even a 50K, in these places we're running, it's a spiritual adventure. I mean, it's to debase it to just a race. It's just a race. I don't know. It just takes something away from it. Takes the magic away from it, for me. I mean, I remember. I don't want to say. I don't want to name names, but I remember running the Western States 100 one time, and this is back again in like maybe the early 2000s. And I was coming upon the woman who was winning the race, and this is like we're close to the finish. We're maybe 5 miles from the finish, and I start to pass her, and I'll never forget. She said the first thing she said to me, it's not like, "Hey, wow, it's nice to meet you. How's it going? Are you in a good race?" She said, "Where is she? Where is she?" I'm like, "Where's who?" And she said the name of the second place woman, like, "How far behind me is she?" And I said, "I have no fucking idea. Like, I don't know. I don't even know when I passed her. I mean, have you seen any the forest out here? Like, have you seen the place we've been running? Like, have you seen the vistas and the views? Or this whole time, have you just been racing against this person who's behind you somewhere?" And I thought, I don't want to ever be like that. It doesn't matter if I'm winning every race. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, the focusing on the winning takes away from the experience and the joy of being out there. You've mentioned multiple times it's a spiritual experience. What does that mean for you?
Again, I think it gets back to being the humans that we are. It just the primordial beasts that we really are. And look at us now. I mean, you can see Athens in the background. I'm in a nice suite in the hills above Athens. I've got a wool sweater on. Come on, let's strip all the shit away and let's go out in the rain. I mean, I can hear I can hear lightning in the background and thunder. Let's go running. Let's get real. Let's go out all night for a run. And I mean, people nowadays, oh, it's raining. I don't want to go out. Are you afraid of getting wet? I mean, go on, enjoy it. Be a little bit cold. It's okay. I don't want to get cold. No, it's okay to be a little bit cold. It's
Mm.
okay to be a little uncomfortable. But I just think we have things so mixed up in Western culture. I mean, I think we thought if we had every convenience available to us, every comfort possible, we'd be happy. And I think we're so comfortable, we're miserable in a lot of ways. And I know you probably feel this way. I mean, you do CrossFit, that's not easy. I mean,
Mhm.
CrossFit's definitely different than running a 50 miler and definitely different than running a 100 miler in Patagonia or someplace in the mountains and the wilds like that. But there's something just so much different than that than what most people have ever experienced in their whole life.
Oh, absolutely. Um, I'm reading this book right now. It's by Johann Harari. It's about depression and anxiety, and it talks about, there's a whole chapter talking about people with like materialistic views and how if you have materialistic views, it drastically increases your chances of developing anxiety and depression, because you develop that comfort and that keeping up with the Joneses and wanting to be uncomfortable, versus once you can strip that back, you have that freedom and you have that ability to be a lot more happy. That's why, experiencing that 50 and doing that half Ironman this year, I've got on my schedule, I've got a 100 miler, I've got a full Ironman, I've got a last man standing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to check
Yeah.
these things off too. But we've been talking about relatively short races for you. I say 135 miles. Speaking of discomfort, you've gone 350 miles in 81 hours with no sleep. What was that for? And talk me through that.
Well, I mean, I thought this is gonna sound crazy, but my goal was to run 500 miles. So it was kind of like I fell short of my goal, but I thought a human could run 500 miles, and that was my ultimate goal. But I kind of tapped out after 350. I just it was 3 nights without sleep, and I was a mess. I was mentally a mess. I mean, physically, I was, just in survival mode. I can do this pretty well. And I think the human body can go into survival mode for a long amount of time, but the sleep deprivation it crushed me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what were the hallucinations like on that one?
Well, on that one, I actually had like an out of body experience. I was running down the road and I saw this little like a praying mantis, like a grasshopper, like a little army man, like the little army man figures from the games,
Mm-hmm.
running below me. This little green creature, kind of just doing. Tick, 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 tick. I'm looking down at this creature in between my feet, and I realized, holy shit, that's me. Like it was as though I was in a helicopter, like a hot air balloon above me, looking down at me, and I thought, this is probably how you feel right before you die. But I somehow came down out of the hot air balloon and got back into myself and said, this is getting a little bit dangerous. Like you're really losing it here. So yeah, that was pretty vivid. Mm.
Was that out of body experience towards the end of the race?
Yeah, it was very close to the end. Nah.
Yeah, so that was probably a lot more sleep deprivation than it was hundreds of miles underneath your belt at that point then.
I think it was
Oh,
extreme exhaustion and
yeah.
just that continually pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think also, when you run those sort of distances, I mean, even when you run a 50 miler, you're overriding your mind is telling you to stop, right? I mean, that pain is a signal that you should stop doing this, but you're willing yourself to like keep going. So I think you can only do that for so long before your body just says, you know, I've given you so many signals, knock, knock, like
Hmm.
enough's enough.
Was this race, was it just you? Or was there multiple people and it was like last man standing before the last man standing, or races became a big thing? What was the actual setup for the race?
Yeah, no, it was a 12-person relay race,
Oh,
and
cool.
I just did it solo. So I followed the course of the of the relay race.
Okay, and they were doing a 12-man 500-mile relay race?
No, it's only 200 miles. So I did extra laps of the yeah. I was going to do 5 laps of the it's like 100 miles to get to the Golden Gate Bridge and 100 miles to the finish. So I was going to do 5 laps of that.
Oh, that's crazy. And so again, was it you this time? So unlike the Badwater where you passed out on the side of the road and your family said, "Hey, you're done." Was it you who had the at least the experience to be like, "Hey, I'm kind of at my limit," or were you told to stop again?
No, I said to my crew like, okay, when we get to the 350-mile mark, that's going to be it. And yeah, I mean, when I finished, I had a news crew with me. There were people following me like the whole time, and I'll never forget. We got to where the finish was, and they had champagne,
Mm.
and it was kind of like maybe 7 or 8 at night. It was already dark, because I did in the fall. And I remember looking around, being very happy and looking around, noticing everyone was in big puffy, like, down jackets. And I was running shirtless because I had built up so much heat over, so much exertion for so many days. I just had my running shorts on, no shirt. And it occurred to me, it's cold out here. Like these people have jackets on because it's cold. And I almost immediately went into hypothermia. So I got incredibly cold, and they put me on the ground. They put me in this mummy bag, like a down sleeping bag, and all that was exposed was my mouth. And I remember just saying, "I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry," and they were putting something like spoonfuls of something in my mouth. I thought it was peanut butter, and then I woke up the next morning. And it was the next day, and I had this kind of gritty taste in my mouth. And I said, what were you feeding me last night? And they said it was hummus. Like you ate 2 containers of hummus. And yeah, so that's how it ended.
How did you feel the next day? What was the recovery time from doing that to feeling back to your normal self?
It wasn't that bad actually. I was surprised. I mean, I don't think the distance of the race or the duration necessarily dictates the recovery time. I think I think when you really push and do something that you're not trained to do, that's going to hurt you the worst.
Mm.
So, if you train on a flat course and then you run a downhill course really fast, you're going to be destroyed because you're not used to going down, especially if there's a lot of, turns like switchbacks along the course. So I don't think it's, how far or how long the race is that dictates how long the recovery would be. I think it's more if you do something you're not used to or haven't trained to do, that's gonna, wreck you the worst.
Just to read off a couple of the other things that you've done, like we mentioned, the 50 marathons, 50 states, 50 days, ran across the Sahara Desert, ran a marathon to the South Pole. You've done, what is it? Is it the Silk Road, or for what of all these
Yeah, the Indian
races?
Silk Road.
Yeah, of all these races, and including the ones we've discussed, what was the worst one, like, for you physically?
There's this race in the Atacama Desert, which is Atacama is in South America. It's in Chile. It's up
Hmm.
against the Andes, and the Atacama Desert is the driest place on earth. So I was out there during a 6-day, 250-kilometer race that's self-supported. So you had to carry everything you needed the entire time. And yeah, when I say it's the driest place on earth, I remember asking a guy like, "Well, when does it rain here?" He said, "It doesn't rain here." I said, "Well, when was the last time it rained here?" And he's like, it's never rained here. We've never recorded a drop of rain. Like as long as we've been keeping record, it has never rained here. So it was so dry, and it was really hot during the day. It was over 100 degrees during the day, and then below freezing at night. And I was sleeping on the ground, sleeping on these rocks at night, freezing, shivering cold at night. I remember my teeth chattering all night, not even be able to sleep, and then getting up the next day and racing. So, there's no shower. Obviously, you don't shower for 6 days. You're eating, freeze dried food, so it's not very good food. And that was a really brutal race. Yeah.
Did you have to carry 6 days worth of water?
No, they gave you 3 liters of water a day. That was
Oh,
one thing they gave you. So you could heat, and they gave little stoves at night. You could heat your water at night. They started a fire at night, so you could heat your water, your food at night. But you had to
for,
carry your pot, that you put your dehydrated food in. Everything else you had to carry.
I mean, 3 liters is not a lot of water either.
No, I mean, no, and I'm small. I was thinking about these, the bigger guys that are drinking a lot more water, and I'm like a camel too. I don't have to drink very much water, so no, it's hardcore. Mm.
Is that a race that's still around? I feel like a lot because they've changed. They've had some rule changes, like with the Badwater. They start at night now. It seems like
Yeah.
they've made some things a little bit less hardcore. So is that race even still around?
Yeah, it's called the Four Deserts Challenge, and the organization called Racing the Planet. And you're right, they have changed. It's different now, so you're not quite as limited, but it's still pretty hardcore. You still have to carry everything you need. I mean, they give you the water, obviously. You're still sleeping in a tent on the ground, in whatever pad you decide to bring. I mean, you can go as heavy as you want, like with a thick sleeping pad and a nice uh, food selection and whatever you want to bring. But then you got to carry that pack during the day. So there's a balance between trying to make it as light as possible, but also being able to survive for 6 days.
Obviously, you've been a huge contributor in making ultra marathons the world renown and household name and that they are now. Like they're far more popular than they've ever been. I'm curious your thoughts on the good and the bad of that. Obviously, it's great for the sport and for the athletes, but the bad of that is like it's extremely hard. Like if I wanted to do Leadville or the Western states, like that's very difficult for me to actually be able to do that just because of how it's allocated, the slots are allocated and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on both of those. I think there's upside to it and there's downside to it. The one thing I do think is a big upside is that when you start ultra running, even just running at all, you start to become more environmentally aware and environmentally conscious. So you start paying attention to the air you breathe. Your values change a little bit. So I think that more people getting into ultra marathoning is pretty much a good thing. Yeah, some of these iconic races, it's craziness trying to get in. But that said, there's a lot of new races coming out that are
Mhm.
interesting and different. So there's other races that are trying to fill in the gaps. But yeah, I think the biggest downside, but it's not just with ultra marathoning. I mean, the London Marathon this year, the 2026 London Marathon. I don't know if you heard this, but they had a little under 50,000 entries available. So about 48,000 entries available. Within 24 hours of opening registration, they had 1.2 million people apply.
That's insane. I mean, my
It-
wife, she's a much faster runner than me. She does
Mm.
marathons. She qualified for Boston this year, so she's training
Yes.
for Boston. But yeah, exactly right. She put in for Chicago and New York and all these races, and it's hard to get in. It's people, which is a double-sided coin. I mean, it's great that people want to do that, but it's unfortunate that you can't always do that when you want to.
Yeah, but I mean, that said, you could do like the Istanbul Marathon, I mean,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
incredible, and or you could go to Rome, or you could. There's a lot of other races.
yeah.
I think it's driving interest in other races in other places. So I think it's ultimately a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of what you're saying is it's great that people are getting into the sport, but unfortunately it seems like the focus on these individual races seems to be more for a social media versus I did that versus the enjoyment of the running. Because if you did actually enjoy the running, there's so many other races for you to be doing.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, like I've done Boston, sure, I've done it many times, and it's a great race. I don't want to discount Boston, but come on, it's maybe a little overhyped. And I remember talking to a guy saying, "Oh yeah, you come around the corner and you see the finish line, you see the City Go sign in the background. And City Go's it's like uh, a gas company, like a petroleum company, and they have a big sign. It's kind of iconic, City Go. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, you come around the final corner at the Athens Marathon and you see the Acropolis in the background. Come on. How can you compare the two? I mean, so you do Boston to say, oh, okay, I did Boston, but then go, explore some of the others that are maybe a little more iconic.
You mentioned, the good thing about people doing these races is they become a little bit more conscious about their health and about the environment and things like that. What are some things that you do, maybe in a daily routine or your diet, that allow you to keep doing this? I mean, you're in your early 60s. You're freaking crushing it. I don't assume you have any plans of slowing down. So because that's how I want to be. What should I be doing now?
I mean, I think you should be doing everything right. People say to me, what's the trick? There's no trick. Look at your life through the lens of being the best animal that you can be. So everything you do, try to optimize it for being the best performer you can be. So be it your training, your cross training, your strength training, your diet, your sleep and recovery, your interpersonal relationships. I mean, if you have harmonious interpersonal relationships, your performance is better. So try to optimize everything for being the best animal you can be, and for lasting as long as you can last. That would be my advice.
What
Yeah.
are some ho things that you do? Like, prioritizing sleep is obviously super important. How much sleep do you get? Are there things that you do to set yourself up to sleep better? And what does your nutrition look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say that I've changed. I've changed and evolved over the years because my nutrition, everything, my sleep has changed as I've gotten more mature, like a fine wine, let's say. But as far as sleep, one thing that I have the luxury of mostly not having to pay attention to is an alarm.
Mm.
So the last hour of sleep to me is so important because that's where a lot of the restorative sleep is taking place. So I try never to wake myself unless I have a meeting or something where I have to get up or training in the morning. But most of the days I wake up naturally, and I think that is just a really great thing. If you can wake naturally, you just even if it's only 4 or 5 hours, if it's natural versus setting an alarm, I just feel so much more rejuvenated, and my energy throughout the day is much higher. Uh, you know, I also, thankfully, I live, between Greece and California. There's a lot of sunshine. Every morning, I like to have a little bit of sunshine on my face. So I go out in the morning, and I do a little bit of light exercise in the sun. So I think that, and you're hearing more and more about that nowadays. It's been so common, especially in Greece, for so many years that when you hear people now, like, these biohackers saying, oh, you should get sunshine, it's good for your microbiome and everything else. I agree with it. It's good, and it's been a practice that's been around for a long time. My diet is, I say if I can't pick it from a tree or dig it from the earth or catch it with my hands, I don't eat it.
Mm.
So nothing refined or processed, nothing that's in a bag. I try to avoid anything that, has gone through a machine, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's great. And another thing with that alarm is like that's an immediate cortisol spike right when you wake up. And that does not set you up for
Yeah.
success. It gets you in that stress state and the whole day, it sets you up for that's a bad way to start your day. So ideally, like you're saying, if you can avoid that alarm clock, or if you can get like one of those light alarm clocks, because obviously some people need alarm clocks, but where it like gradually brightens your room so it kind of simulates the sunshine is great. I have that. I've definitely, there's a lot of things that I do that is outside of the normal to set myself up for success in my training and my sleep and my nutrition. So those are all great things. Are you still running races? Do you have any more races on the horizon?
I'm running too many races. That's my problem. I mean, I ran up 50K on Sunday that had something insane, like 10,000 feet of climbing and descending, and I'm pretty trashed. I mean, it was 50K,
Yeah.
so for me, it's relatively not that far, but all that up and down and it was on the road. So yeah. And before that, I did a mountain race before that. I've got a 150-mile race in February in Portugal. And then I've got the 48-hour championships in Italy in March. So I'm I'm
You got
running and
races.
racing as much as ever. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
slower, but I'm still doing it. Yeah.
That's amazing. What's been your favorite race of all time?
Oh, we talked about all these exotic races all around the world and these great distances, but my favorite race ever was a 10K I did with my daughter Alexandria on her 10th birthday.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, I mean, to a dad, nothing will ever surpass that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. That half Ironman that I did, I was fortunate enough. I've got 4 younger siblings. I'm the oldest of 5, and all 5 of us did it. It was so much fun.
Wow.
We all signed up, we all trained, and we're all a very competitive and fitness oriented family. Like we're all doing that. But it was a blast. Like none of us had ever done it, so we all got bikes. We all started training. We're all in different states, and it was super fun to show up that day. We all started at the same time, and then 3, 2, 1, go, and it was so much fun.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Did you win? Who won? Out of the 5 siblings.
I won. It was close though. I was fortunate enough I was probably my younger sister, or my oldest sister, who's the middle child. She's 22. Great runner, really, really good runner. But obviously, I was able to be the fastest out of the water, and then being a male and having the legs that I do, I was able to put some ground on the bike, and then I was able to just hold her off on the run. So I came through, and then about 10, 12 minutes later, she came through, and it was super fun. It was great. We all got pictures at the finish line. The record, I think, for the most family members to do an Ironman is 6. So the plan is to try and break that. We're getting my wife and then like my dad and my mom involved, and we're gonna try and break that record.
That'd be amazing. That'd be really amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to hear when that happens. That'd be
yeah,
a great moment. Yeah.
it'll be super fun. It was a great time. I've got in April a last man standing race, where I'm running the 4.2 miles or whatever it is every hour on the hour. What are your opinions on those? I assume kind of based off of your experience with running that I've heard about it, enjoying the nature. I assume that boring 4-mile loop can get a little bit repetitive for you too.
I mean, I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think I've done 24-hour races on a track. I've even run
Mm.
24 hours on a treadmill before. So, I'm not, a 4.1 mile loop is fine with me. But, I mean, it's a new challenge, and I think it's good to try these things. Yeah.
Speaking of your 24 hours on a treadmill, as I was researching this, I was like, I came across that, and then I was able to find the YouTube video of you just up in Times Square on that little scaffolding on this treadmill out in the middle of Times Square with all the billboards and stuff showing you. What was that like? That's got to be insane.
Yeah, and it was on summer solstice, which is, June 21st,
Mm-hmm.
and it was roasting hot and humid. And every time those, the plasma screens, those Megatrons would change to a different scene, sometimes there's a front view, sometimes side views. I'd get like hit with this wave of like, it felt like a microwave oven just emitting all this heat and just wash over me. Yeah. And at the end, I remember taking my hair and I could just break off pieces of hair like it was straw. I was so dehydrated and dried out during that experience. Yeah, it was. Eh, it's one and done. Let's say
One
that.
and done,
Yeah.
not recommend. What was
No.
that for?
It was for, it was one for prostate cancer, so it was a
Mm,
charity, but also there was a new sports drink that came out called Accelerate that was a competitor back then of Gatorade.
mm.
So it was a launch of Accelerate. Uh,
I've never heard of that, so obviously it didn't
I
survive
think I
Gatorade.
don't think it
Yeah.
lasted very long. Yeah.
It's hard to compete with that. What are some things that you recommend people like? What are some maybe 2 or 3 non-negotiables that you have on these longer races, nutrition or equipment wise?
Hmm. I try not to have non-negotiables because I try to be just so self-reliant that if anything
Mm,
goes wrong, it's not going to throw me off. Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm probably a bad guy to ask that question because I can go for a long time without eating or drinking and just kind of shuffling along in a kind of a suffering state, like
yeah,
like Sufferfest. But there's nothing really that I rely on so much.
that's. I mean, another thing that we came across. I mean, you've had some extensive testing done on your genetic state and your ability to run the
Mhm.
way that you do. One of those things is like you don't accumulate lactate as much as the average person. What are is that just luck of the draw in terms of genetics, or how? What are all these weird, unique one-offs about you that have allowed you to have the career that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm 100% Greek, like I said, and my
Yeah.
dad always insists we're from the same village where Pheidippides, the original Greek marathoner,
Hmm.
came from. And I'm like, Dad, we grew up in LA. What village in the hills of Greece? He's like, no, your ancestors just came from there. So I really don't know. I mean, but there is one thing they say, and that is, the best thing you can do as a long distance runner is to choose your parents well.
Mm.
So I recommend doing a good job choosing your parents.
How much of it do you actually think is obviously a huge advantage with genetic potential on that? How much of it do you think it is the mental side of things as well? I mean, you're going to have people who can't choose their parents well, and maybe they won't be the best, but I imagine they can still become quite good.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think with an ultra marathon, it's mostly mental, and
Mm.
certainly the further you go, it's mostly mental. But when you come down to like the marathon distance, to say, well, this guy can suffer worse than anyone else, I don't know. I think that there's probably biochemical things going on and physiological things that give certain people an advantage. I know that when I'm running with someone for the same distance, they might say to me, God, I have so much pain, like this is horrible," and I don't feel anything.
Mm.
So is it me just are we at the same level? Like if someone could somehow quantify it where they say, well, you're both experiencing the same amount, they just feel it so much more and you're so used to it, you don't feel it. I really don't know the answer to that.
That's super interesting. Yeah, they say the farther you go, the less. I mean, gender matters as well. Like male and female can compete pretty comparably the further you out you go. I mean, you look at Courtney Dauwalter, who's a machine, and the other women in the sport. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one element of this sport that doesn't get as much attention as it should. And that is, I did an analysis, like I used AI to do an analysis, and I think it was like at mile 191, somewhere around there. It was just a statistic. Women are better than men. So
Mm.
a woman is more likely to win a race above this distance. So, and it's not for anything other than just women are better at ultra marathoning naturally than men at certain distances.
That's so cool. That's that's so unique in the sporting world as well. At least that I've come across. So that's really cool. I wonder what sets them up for that success. Maybe their ability to to sustain pain. Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard that women because of because of estrogen, because of
Mm.
childbearing, that estrogen is a natural pain diminisher. I don't know if that's true. I know after watching my wife give birth, I I, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So she's definitely tougher than me. But also, I've heard that women naturally have more body fat and are more efficient at burning body fat for fuel. So that's one reason. But
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, I who knows, right?
Someone's listening to this. They're like, okay, I'm convinced. Chase, Dean, you guys, I want to do an ultra marathon. what's the time frame you think they should? Let's say they run like 3 to 5K, every week, so they're not super trained. What's the time frame you think they should have to train for it? And should they go straight to 50 or 100? What should they do to prep?
I mean, I think it depends on their age, their baseline level of fitness. If they're, because some guys some guys come out of the gym, or they do CrossFit or, TRX or whatever, and they're pretty fit just to begin with. So for them, it might be 4 or 5 months. They're ready to do it. If you're not exercising at all, like couch to 100K, I don't know if that's such a good idea. I think you got to start with a 50K and maybe give it 7 or 8 months of training. Yeah.
I was doing because I competed at CrossFit at a high level. Then I got burned out of that. Didn't do any gym for like 2 years. And then I started just going back to a CrossFit gym because, I needed to start moving again. I had that desire to move my body again, which is good. I hadn't had that in a while. And after about like 6 months of just going to the class, hanging out, me and my siblings decided to do that Ironman. So I had about 3 months of just like hardcore prep where I was doing 2 a day. And then 30 days after that, I just went straight to the 50 miler, and it was great. I have no complaints. My sister destroyed it, the one who I barely beat because it was straight running. I think she set the course record for females.
Wow.
She was like 21. It was her first time.
Wow.
She did it in like low 8 hours or high 7 hours, which was she did fantastic.
Respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I did it in like 11 hours, something like that, with the break time. So I was pretty happy with that. So after that race, I told her, I was like, Davis, I think we found your sport. Like, you're really good.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
She's gonna do I'm doing the last man standing with her, and then in October we're going back to Utah to do the Pony Express 100 miler. So we'll do
the Pony. You can do the Pony Express.
Yeah.
Wow. And she's you said she's in her early 20s?
22. Yeah.
Good. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's got a bright future ahead of her. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a really hard worker. Well,
Yeah.
Dean, this was an absolute pleasure. The more I was studying and prepping for this conversation, the more I was like, who is this guy? What is going on? Like, we didn't even touch on so many of the things that you've done. And maybe that's something we can do on another conversation down the line, because it was an absolute blast to talk to you. But
likewise. And yeah.
I do have a tradition where I end the podcast with 2 questions for the guest. The first question being, who do you think I should speak to next and why? And then the second one is inspired by the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, if you encounter a man of rare intellect, you should ask him what books he reads. So what would be a book you recommend?
Oh my God. I think you got to start with Homer. The Iliad and the Odyssey. Yeah, yes. Homer. Yeah. And once you read Homer, you're kind of screwed for the rest of your reading career, because nothing even comes close to that. But anyway, Homer. Yeah.
Okay. You read the abridged version or the short little snippets in high school, and I did have it on I actually had it on my to read book list this year already. So I'm going to get to that this year and read both of them.
They're good. I mean, I have to be honest, so much depends on the translation. I probably read 5 or 6 different translations. Some are really good, some are not so good. So just when you're selecting the one you're going to listen to or read, make sure it's like the translation, the one the most recommended, because whoever does the translation is going to make it or break it for you.
Okay, noted.
Yeah. And the ancient Greek language, as I've learned, you just can't compare. You can't capture in English some of the way they put things. Yeah.
How has it been acclimating to that Greek language over there in Athens? Have you been picking it up pretty good, or?
Nay, poli, nay. Yeah, come to Greece. I'll tell you. I mean, that's the craziest thing about Greece is the word that means yes sounds like if you hear English, someone says nay.
Yeah.
You just think no. Yeah, nay is yes. So that's the first thing you got to learn.
Okay. Well, Greece is been on my list for one of the places that I've wanted to go to most, just for the culture and seeing all, like all of their amazing architecture is amazing. So definitely where I'll take you up on that sometime. When I'm out there, I'll hit you up and you can leave me behind on a run.
I think all five of you guys, all five of the siblings should run the Athens Marathon one year.
Yes,
That should be on
100%.
your bucket list. Yeah.
100%. Two of my sisters, the twins, they're the youngest, Micah and Molly. They are also getting acclimated to different cultures by immersion. One of them is in Denmark for 18 months and the other is in Argentina for 18 months on a church mission. So again, they didn't know the language. They're just out there trying to figure it out. So they're going to come back and they're going to really experience that. But my first question, who do you think I should speak to next and why? And then I'll let you go.
Have you ever interviewed Charlie Engle?
I have not.
He's a good friend of mine. He's another ultramarathoner.
Okay.
Really interesting guy for all kinds of reasons. But I'll just say that you should interview Charlie. And I'll also say something which he'll love. He'll love this, actually. He's an ex-con. So he spent some time in jail, but he's lighthearted about it. He's funny as hell. Yeah. So Charlie Engle. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. I'll definitely shoot him a message and hopefully get the chance to talk to him. Well, Dean, again, this was an absolute pleasure. Where can people follow you? Where can they get more of you? And drop some of your books. Where should people start with your books?
I mean, someone said if you Google Dean, I'm the first Dean that comes up. So just Google Dean. You can put it in a K if you want to make sure it's me, but I'm on social media. I've got a website. Look at Ultramarathon Man, which was my first book. It was a New York Times bestseller. It's been it's in print, I think 21 languages. So it's an inspirational book.
Yeah.
I think you'll enjoy it. So maybe check out one of my books.
Awesome. Well, Dean, again, just to mention this real quick, it's crazy. You own the website and your Instagram handle is Ultramarathon. I thought that was so funny.
That's because I'm old. I'm like the first people. Yeah.
I was like, Dean jumped on this right out of the gate. That's funny. Well, you could probably sell the Ultramarathon website down the line for some money.
Yeah, no, it was a good investment. It was like free when I bought it, and like it's worth a lot now. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Dean, again, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well.